The Trijicon SRO, this week on Mail Call Mondays. Mail Call Mondays is brought to you by Modular Driven Technologies. If you need a chassis system for your precision rifle, check out mdttac.com. I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this Monday we are going to talk about the SRO, the Specialized Reflex Optic from Trijicon. Now, this is an RMR that I have on the pistol here in front of me. This is a polymer 80 build. This is an RMR Type 1. It's the actual RM01 with no adjustments on it whatsoever, and it is on the Danger Close Armament Glock 19 build. And I have Dinah the pup wandering around here. I didn't want to lock her out of the studio because she is still a little bit too young to be left completely alone unless I put her in her kennel. So if you hear something moving around in here, it is more than likely Dinah because she hasn't figured out how to be quiet yet. So this week we came back from the NRA show. It was held in Indianapolis, and that's about 2.5 hours north of us. So I figured it was a great chance for me to pop up there and check out anything new that was going on. The two key things that I wanted to check out was the Trijicon SRO and the new Hornady A-Tip bullets. So we're going to concentrate on the Trijicon SRO, but I'll talk a little bit about the Hornady A-Tips as well. The Hornady A-Tip bullets actually utilize a aluminum ballistic tip on the tip of them, where you would normally find a polymer tip. Now Hornady is utilizing an aluminum tip, and they feel that that gives them better consistency. Also, they have basically redesigned the entire bullet, and then they have gone over their production line as well. So the A-tip bullets are not just a ELD with a different tip. They are actually a completely different design. They're designed to be a more VLD type design, and they are designed to be more consistent in production than the ELDMs. Basically, what was explained to me is that on the A-tips, the production line is run sequentially, and when the bullets come off of the machine, say 100 bullets come off the machine in a line, those 100 bullets are what's going into the package and going to you. So instead of before where a bunch of lines would run and the bullets would go into one big lot and they would get final processed and all this stuff before they come to you, this time you are getting 100 bullets that came off the same tooling directly in a row. So that should increase shot-to-shot consistency, should help with those standard deviations, all of that fun stuff. And I would hope that if you buy a 1,000-round lot of them, that you're going to get 1,000 bullets that came off in a line. That would be a great thing to see. Now, you're still going to have to be careful when you seat these bullets. You're going to need a seating stem that is designed for this type of bullet. Hornady does offer one for their dies, or you can just go ahead and make your own seating stem. The bullets do still have thin jackets like the ELDMs, so if you get right up on the top on that point and you try to seat a bullet with any kind of neck tension, you are going to cause a problem in that jacket. You may end up with a donut, or you may end up with deformation on the jacket. So you will want to make sure that you take steps to utilize a VLD seating stem, or one that you've set up. And I actually didn't think about this before, but the Hornady engineer that I was talking to mentioned that it's very easy for you to make your own seating stem. So just take whatever stem you have on your die, drill a hole through it so that the stem seats down an appropriate length on the bullet itself. Then pack it with some JB Weld, put some release compound on the bullet itself, stick it in there, put it in the die, and then go ahead and seat the bullet and leave the ram in the up position so that the bullet is in the seating stem, and let it dry. When it has set, you should be able to drop that bullet back out, and the release compound should allow it to pop out of the JB Weld. And now you will have a seating stem that is designed specifically for the A-tip bullets. And of course, that doesn't just work with the A-Tip, it works for just about everything, although be careful doing it on jacketed hollow points because you may squeeze some JB weld in there and you may get a mechanical lock inside depending upon how large that ballistic tip is, or that ballistic hollow tip is. So the A-Tips I am going to be really interested to check out. They come in a 6mm, they come in two different weights of 6.5mm, and then they come in some heavy 30 caliber. These bullets are really designed to be that 800 and out bullet. They're designed to work in that transonic range, so they didn't mention any possibility of a lighter weight 30 caliber offering for instance, 308s. They're still holding that if you want to play in that 800 and in range, the ELD-M is still a better option for you. These are for the extreme long range, and they are significantly more expensive than the ELD-Ms. Hopefully, as the process goes on and as these bullets wear off a little bit of that new, then maybe the price will come down a bit. But these are specialized, really extreme long range bullets. Now, I will be interested to get some in, and hopefully get some in for the 6.5 Creedmoor, maybe for the 243, because both those rifles have the ability to reach out beyond 1,000 yards, and see how well those work. The 6mm was specifically designed for that 6 Creedmoor cartridges, the 6 Dashers, those cartridges. So the 243 runs right within them, although obviously it's not a Wildcat, it's not the new hotness, it's kind of been pushed to the back of the shelf a little bit, but I still enjoy shooting the 243. So hopefully we'll get some of those bullets in. I might even get some in and run them in a 300 Win Mag, since the 220 class and up bullets will run in the 300 if we select our load appropriately. So looking forward to playing with those guys and seeing what kind of accuracy we get out of them. Now back to the Trijicon. Now the SRO really interested me when they released it because I shot RMRs quite a bit. This is my everyday carry gun that does have an RMR on it. I like them for competition / tactical type guns. They are really, without a doubt, right now the most durable reflex sight that you can mount on a handgun slide. So the RMR is really king of that niche. But it does have some drawbacks. One of the drawbacks is the size of the window. It has a relatively small window. It also has a fairly dark blue tinting on the glass, which can be distracting for some shooters. So you take the tinting and you take the size of the window, and for shooters that are new to a red dot system, sometimes it makes it difficult for them to pick up the dot. It takes a little bit of extra training. It takes some fine-tuning of that natural point of aim. And once you get that down, then it's fairly quick to use. You do need to run both eyes open when you use a dot sight. That way it helps negate some of that small window and some of that tinting issue. But overall, the RMR is a very, very rugged, very good option for a combat optic on a handgun. The SRO, however, was designed specifically with competition in mind, not as a combat optic. And this is where some of the confusion has come up. I see guys continually referencing carrying this optic. Well, Trijicon has designed this to be a competition optic, because right now, if you look across their line, they don't really have any optics for handguns that are designed specifically for handgun competition. So they're hoping the SRO will fill that niche, and that's why it's a specialized reflex optic, not a combat optic. Now, it does still have a forged aluminum body, but the benefits of the SRO is it has a larger window to be able to pick up the dot. A larger window means you have more glass surface area, you have more of a possibility to catch that dot if it is just offset slightly to your sight picture. The SRO will still come in a 1 MOA, a 2.5 MOA, or a 5 MOA option, so you can tune that dot into what you need to use it for. If you're putting it on a carbine or a bolt gun as a secondary optic, you're probably going to want a more precise option. If you are putting it on something that is going to be fast, up close and dirty, then that 5 MOA may be fine for you. My preference is for that 2.5 MOA. It's right there in the middle. I can still use it for precise shots if I dial the illumination down a little bit, so I get that nice crisp dot. But it is not so large that it's distracting. And if I need a larger dot, I can crank it up and it blooms a little bit, and you will still get kind of the effect of a larger dot. So the controls are from the short amount of time that I had to mess with it at the NRA, the controls are pretty much the same as what we have on the RMO7 here, with your plus and minus on either side to go through the various different modes. Again, I didn't have a lot of time to test the automatic brightness and all this stuff that we have in the RMR. The big noticeable features are, like I said, the window is larger, but also the tinting is more subdued. So where you look through the RMR, you have a pretty severe blue tint, and it does have a slightly lighter gradient as you go towards the bottom of the window. The SRO, that gradient is even more pronounced and is a lighter blue tinting, so you get a little bit cleaner sight picture. Now in bright daylight, the little bit of a blue tint doesn't really hurt you, and what it does is it helps you to pick up the dot. The dot doesn't have to be as bright to be seen against the target, so that helps you with your battery life. And speaking with the reps there, they said that you will lose about 1 year of battery life with the SRO over the RMR. Now the RMRs have a pretty severe battery life to begin with. You really can change your battery once a year and not worry about it. So that is not a huge deal. I think the SRO, you'll find that if you are conservative with your brightness settings, so you're not always running it on the brightest, then you will more than likely, again, be able to just change it once a year and be done. But the SRO brings a really nice option that the RMR does not have, and the SRO is top-loading battery compartment. Now, top-loading battery compartments are pretty much a normal thing across optics. The next major competitor to the RMR, which would be the Leupold Delta Point Pro, has a top-loading battery compartment. So with this designed as a match optic or a competition optic, that top-loading compartment is really nice because it means before a major match, you can go ahead and replace your battery and have that confidence that you are fresh throughout the match. This is really important, I think, going forward for Trijicon, because when we start looking at agency adoption, and we'll talk about that in a minute, being able to replace the battery without removing the optic is really important. For shooters who are experienced with working on their guns, they understand torque values, they understand being careful with things, and they understand the fact that when you remove an optic from a system, put it back on the system, you need to check the zero, even if you are 100% certain that optic has always returned to zero in the past. This is something that creates a whole lot of issues in an agency-type environment. So going forward, I hope to see on Trijicon's handgun-mounted optics that the top-loading battery compartment becomes a normal thing. Now, let's talk about that agency adoption, because when we were talking to Trijicon, there are already some law enforcement agencies that are looking at the SRO, and the web has exploded with comments about that optic in a concealed carry role as well. Well, as we mentioned at the beginning of this, the RMR is still positioned as the king of the combat optic for a handgun. It is still the most durable optic in Trijicon's lineup, and I think it would be safe to say that it is probably the most durable handgun optic across the board that is produced right now. That's really why it has held the market share that it has held. Now, the SRO, because of those advantages, larger window, less blue tinting on it, top-loading battery compartment, that really automatically brings it into the spotlight for an open carry type situation like you would have with a law enforcement officer. We don't have to worry about the little bit of extra size on the optic when it's in a duty holster. The drawback is that extra size on the window means that it will not fit into the current issue Safariland holsters without a little bit of modification. The window has a shield on it, and they had to push the window forward a little bit to accommodate the top-load battery compartment. That pushed everything forward from where we normally have it mounted in a cutout like this, or in the MOS platform. And the end of the shroud around the window comes up almost even with the hood on the barrel. So if you run a irons forward setup, you will not be able to just remove the RMR and put an SRO on it. The RMR and the SRO does use the exact same footprint. So on a slide like this right here with the MOS, I could take the RMR off. I could put an SRO on here just fine. The same thing with the Grey Ghost slide that I have on this pistol. This is an RMR cut, not a MOS. And with the RMR cut, I could drop an SRO right in here and be fine. They had an SRO mounted on a STI Omni, so the Omni mounting system, that will work just fine. The SRO will go on there just fine. So if you want to run one of those in competition, that is an option. But guys that have specific irons setups on their handgun, it may not work for you if you are running an irons forward setup. Now let's talk about a concealed carry type setup. The SRO I really don't think is going to cause problems in a concealed carry environment should you decide to do so. The height of the window is really only slightly higher than the RMR. I tried to get some side-by-side photos. That was a little bit difficult there, so it doesn't really show the height difference in the two. But if you are carrying in an appendix fashion, I don't think it's a issue to worry about at all. The optic is the same width. It is just a little bit taller, and so that is really where you're going to add the extra bulk to the system. And, of course, the shroud sticking forward from the window. So if you wanted to run it in a concealed carry issue, no problem at all. The big problem is, of course, running it in a full retention duty holster that protects the optic. So the Safariland holsters, there are some modifications that you will need to do to those holsters. I don't endorse modifying duty holsters to accommodate things. I'll leave that up to Safariland to redesign their design, which I'm sure they are already working on. You can find the information out there, but at an agency standpoint, you're not going to want to modify duty holsters because of the liability behind it. So that is a possibility for individuals to do, but I think for there, we're just going to have to wait and see what Safariland releases to accommodate this optic. But again, back to the concealed carry, if you wanted to carry one, it's not that big of a deal. Now, if you run behind the hip, you may have a little bit more sticking forward to print, but even that I don't think is going to be an issue because we're talking about the portion of the handgun that is going to be closest to your belt if you're running in a standard behind the hip fashion. So sticking out a little bit up here is not that big of a deal. It's less of an issue than more grip sticking out. So that tiny little bit, maybe an extra 1/4 of an inch or so, is not a huge deal for concealed carry. Now, the big deal is the durability. When we were speaking with Trijicon, they really came right off the bat and said that the RMR is going to survive more abuse. The RMR is going to survive those shoulder-high drops onto concrete that everybody likes to see, whereas there is a high likelihood with the SRO that if you drop it optic down, shoulder-high onto concrete, that you're going to crack the lens. Now, they did say that that crack will not prevent you from continuing to fire, that you should still retain your zero when you do that. We obviously don't have any way to test that right now because I do not have an SRO in my hands. I'm sure there are testers out there, probably Sage Dynamics, Aaron Cohen. I'm sure he is currently testing an SRO, so we will see what he comes up with. Once I get an SRO in my hands, yes, we will absolutely go through a full review with it, beating it up, drop testing it, and all that fun stuff. But the pretty much anything that you need to keep in mind is the SRO is going to be less durable than the RMR. So really, you have to decide if the larger window and the top-loading battery is worth the durability trade-off with the SRO. For me, I still believe the SRO is probably going to be durable enough for 99.9% of the armed citizen and the law enforcement environment. The reason I say that is because when I am looking at optics that are duty ready, what I'm concerned with is the fumbles out of the holster. So we go into a training day, guys are shooting time and time again, guys are trying to push that speed up and up and up, or we're doing defensive tactics or things like that, doing simunitions, force on force kind of things. The possibility of coming out of the holster, hooking something, and having the gun skitter across the firing line, which of course Murphy's Law will always hit optic first, the optic needs to be durable enough that we can just pick the gun up, dust it off, and continue with training for the day. We can't have a failure that takes it out of that. We can't really have failures that are causing us to replace optics every time that occurs, because there is a high likelihood of that happening. The likelihood of coming up, rotating the gun, and then dropping it optic down from shoulder high onto a concrete firing line is very, very, very slim. I have shot handguns for all of my adult life. I've shot optics-equipped handguns for quite some time now, and at no point in my shooting career have I ever actually accidentally dropped a handgun slide down from shoulder high. It just hasn't happened. Now, the possibility is there. So for a combat optic, I want something that in a fight, if an officer did the worst thing they could do, which is that shoulder high drop onto concrete, onto the shoulder of a highway, I still want them to be able to pick it up and have a usable optic. Now, if they pick it up and that usable optic has a crack across the window, as long as the 0 is still intact, as long as the dot is still there, as long as you can still continue the gunfight with that handgun, then it's accomplished its mission. After it comes back from ballistics, we can swap the optic out and then gas on. Trijicon obviously will repair the optic in that situation, put it back on the gun, and you're good to go. So as long as it will survive that situation, that's really what I want. Now, if it will survive it without cracking the glass, that's better. But I wouldn't totally discount it because of that. And in speaking with the rep that we had at the show, he said that it was about a 50% survivability for the SRO. So they would all survive and still be usable, but about 50% the glass would crack, 50% it wouldn't. And that's understandable if you look at the housing. When you look at an RMR, we've got these horns here to take the brunt of the impact and focus the impact down on the optic body. And if you have a Type 2, you actually have a little bit of an air gap underneath the horns before you hit the lens. The Type 1s, they don't have the air gap, but they still have the horns to be able to focus that down along the sides of the body. So you avoid focusing all that force right on to the top curve of the window. The SRO does not have that, probably to minimize bulk. And so when it takes a hit, it is focusing that straight down onto the window. So any flex in that housing is going to be focused onto the glass. We've seen other manufacturers try to do polymer windows on optics. Polymer windows on optics really, really do not work well for durability. I've seen some high mileage RMR windows where they really have started to develop some scratches and all this. So polymer windows are not a good way to try to sidestep that cracking issue. I would rather take a window that will stay clear longer, that will be easier to clean, easier to maintain, that might possibly crack if I skip it across the pavement, versus a polymer window that is less likely to crack but is going to fog and scratch up and become unusable within a couple of years. So that's just my opinion on that. I will be really interested to see going forward what agencies decide to adopt the SRO, because I'm fairly certain I already know a couple that will put it on their approved list. I know agencies out there right now that have optics that are much less durable than what the SRO is proposed to be on their approved list. So I think you will see some law enforcement agencies adopt them, and as soon as Safariland gets the holsters ready to go, and there aren't any modifications required on those holsters, then that should be good to go as well. Some of the earlier like ALS holsters that don't have the shell that closes over the optic, I was told that it's just a matter of grinding away a little bit of the Kydex on the front of that holster, opening up the aperture a little bit more so that that forward shroud off the window can fit in there, that the hood will still lock up and close over it, that it's just the RDS holsters that have the cover that snaps up over it. The actual internal lock interferes with the front of the optic, or the optic interferes with the lock in those holsters and won't allow the gun to go completely in and seat. So those take some internal modifications to make everything fit. Everything you can do with a Dremel, probably not something you want to do at an agency level. So my initial impressions of the Trijicon SRO is it's a very nice optic. I think it is a step in the right direction for Trijicon. I really want to see them take that top-loading battery compartment and put it into an optic that they're confident is a combat-ready optic. And I will be interested to see how their market placement goes going forward. I have a feeling once these optics get out into the field and they get banged around and smashed around in the field quite a bit, the opinion may change and they may move this more towards something that they are placing as a combat optic alongside the RMR. I don't think you're going to see the RMR go anywhere because of military contracts and because of the widespread adoption of it. It is still a great optic for me. I'm not going to be replacing any of my RMRs anytime soon, but I will be placing an order for an SRO for my own use, and I will be contacting Trijicon to try to get a T&E in as soon as I possibly can. So that is my opinion on the Trijicon SRO, but as always, I want to know what you guys have to say. Are you interested in the SRO? Do you think it's a good concealed carry optic? Do you think it's a good duty optic? Do you think it's a good competition optic? Where do you see it fitting? And do you think it is a good option when you compare it to the competition out there, the Leupold Delta Point, the Vortex offerings, the Holosuns, all the other optics that are available now? I really want to hear what you guys have to say, so go ahead and drop it in the comments section below. And that's it for this Mail Call Mondays. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below or send them to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast app, you can send questions to us at 8541tactical@gmail.com. If you like the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell icon down there so you get notified when we release new videos. And if you guys want to know how to support the videos that you know and love, check us out over on Patreon. We would love to have your support. Until next time, get out and shoot. So the next major competitor to... Told you. Good girl. Good girl, Dinah. We'll wait until she stops barking. She's doing her job.